You're listening to The Switch. The Switch is a podcast about ideas and experiences that change our minds. In this episode, we talk with GORUCK Cadre Ragnar, a.k.a. Phil, about mental toughness and the DFQ mindset cultivated in something like a GORUCK event.
Chase and I have both had many switches where an idea really changed either how we thought or how we acted or both. And what we're trying to explore here is these ideas, as well as similar things that have affected other people in similar ways. So if you like what we do here on The Switch, you can check us out on social media. On Instagram and Twitter, we are at Switch_podcast. And on Facebook, we are The Switch Podcast.
So, without further delay, we start with a quote from Rory Miller's book, Facing Violence, where he talks about a valuable life skill. There's one thing that helps with breaking freezes and real fights in general. It's also a life habit that can profoundly affect what you accomplish in life and how your friends see you. It can make your reputation. Develop a habit of doing unpleasant things quickly and without hesitation. If you're going to jump in the cold water, jump in the cold water. If you need to get up, get your ass out of bed. Do the dishes that need doing. Finish the hard jobs at work while everyone else is coming up with excuses to get out of them. Like with applying force, all of your agonizing should be concentrated on deciding if you should do something. Once that's decided, do it. Quickly, efficiently, and without hesitation. The ability to do this amazes mere mortals. It almost qualifies as a superpower. To me, that quote embodies at least part of this mindset of decide, then get things done. Don't fucking quit. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest for this episode. I know him as Cadre Ragnar, a.k.a. Phil. Welcome to The Switch.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Hey, Phil.
So, before I get into exactly how I know you, why I know you as Cadre Ragnar and not Phil, let me just get some background on like who you are, where you came from, and just some of that sort of credential type stuff, but really your story. Yeah,
sure. I don't know how many people that do know me as Cadre Ragnar actually know how old I am, so I'll start with that. I'm 49 years old. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, in a steel town. Dad was a construction guy, so I kind of had that hard work ethic thing put into me early in life. C- student in high school. Somehow struggled my way into college after turning down the Coast Guard. And I graduated Penn State University and was commissioned in the Army.
What did you study?
Exercise sports science.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. All right. So you finish college, you go into the Army. What were you planning on doing in the Army? Like, did you have a mission right from the get-go?
I basically figured that out in the 4 years of college through ROTC. I was commissioned an infantry officer, served in the 101st and the 75th Ranger Regiment, and then right at that point between first lieutenant and captain is your chance to go to SF selection or Special Forces selection. And I did that then, and then I spent the remainder of my career in Army Special Forces.
All right. So, and what year did you join the Army?
I graduated in 91. So I retired in 2011.
All right. Wow, that's an interesting span of time as far as Army career goes. Okay, so you retired in 2011, and this is going to get sort of into how I know you through something called GORUCK. What year did you start your affiliation with GORUCK?
Actually, I just started with GORUCK about 2 years ago.
Okay, so 2016?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened in that span of time between 2011 and 2016?
So when I retired, I went to work for a company called NEK. Doesn't really stand for anything, but it spells neck, NEK, right? So
fair enough.
It's there's a long story behind that, but my first Special Forces team sergeant was this big burly guy, and he always asked if everybody else had neck. Anybody had neck, if they didn't have neck, they weren't on the team, kind of thing. So he started a company. We got out. It was called NEC, or NEK. So I worked for those guys,
Okay.
too, and we did special operations training for the military as contractors.
All right. And so how did you first hear about GORUCK?
So interestingly enough, I heard it in passing a few times, didn't think much of it, to be honest. And then I had an interaction with another GORUCK Cadre in all places in Argentina. We were in Argentina in 2016 with a company called Self-Reliant Crucible, and we were on this team event that we circumnavigated Mount Fitzroy in Argentina. So I met this guy there, John's his name, and I said, hey man, I'm kind of interested in that. And it kind of led me down that path and got me connected with the right people. Dug into it a little bit, and come to find out Jason McCarthy, the owner of GORUCK, was a Special Forces NCO in my company literally about 10 days to 2 weeks after I changed command. So we didn't actually serve together in the company, but we know all the same characters. So there was an immediate connection right there with Jason and the company.
Yeah, and so for those who don't know, Jason is the founder of GORUCK. So maybe this is a good place to stop and just explain what is GORUCK, and specifically what is a GORUCK challenge? Okay,
well, so in simplest terms, GORUCK is both a service and a product company. The services are the events, and the products are a whole line of backpacks and clothing and other apparel, right? The GORUCK Challenge is a team event. Well, let's back up. GORUCK's motto is building better Americans. And so when I go to an event, I make sure everybody knows that, and then I ask, well, how do we do that? We do that through these team events. So the GORUCK Challenge series has 3 different events: a heavy, a tough, and a light. And as the names might imply, there are different lengths of time and different distances associated with those events. So a heavy's 24 hours, a tough's 12, and a light's 7.
Right.
And so what happens at these challenges is you, as an individual, for whatever purpose, for whatever reason, you heard about GORUCK and you got online, you said, I want to pay money to carry a backpack and do crazy stuff. And it really gets a lot of people. A lot of people are just like, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And you get all walks of life. They're 99% civilians. And some of them are just into physical fitness and they like endurance type events. And some of them want to learn something about themselves. And some of them are just coming along for the ride because somebody told them it was a good idea. But at the end of the day, what we do is when you sign up and you show up at the start point, whoever shows up is your team. So you may or may not know these people. Chances are you don't know most of them. And standing in front of them is a GORUCK Cadre. And GORUCK Cadre are former or current special operations members. And so that's a whole other conversation, right? But special operations forces implies Army Special Forces, Rangers, Navy SEALs, MARSOC Marines. You get it's more than just special forces, but it's founded by a special forces person, Jason McCarthy.
Yep.
And so what happens at this event is, you get through a quick admin phase and you tell them, hey, get your rucks on. And there's a whole pile of stuff laying in front of them: sandbags, tires, stretchers, ammo cans, you name it. And the cadre begins to facilitate the event, and we basically put them in a panic right off the bat. A.k.a. the welcome party, right? Mm-hmm. Now, generally an hour of just, you don't know what's happening to you. You want to quit right there, but you're looking around and everybody else hasn't quit. And people do quit at that moment. But after a certain period of time, that turns into, okay, now the team event starts. And so the GORUCK Challenge essentially is several things. It's about teamwork. It's about leadership. It's about being a good follower, and it's about mental and physical toughness.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I had originally asked you to come on was this mental toughness aspect, and there are definitely a lot of components to it, but one of the things I noticed that I didn't understand before I did my first challenge was part of the attitude you have to have is not like, okay, let me get all these miles in, let me, lift all the sandbags and stuff and do all the hard things. Like if you have that in your head from the start, for me at least, that was not the right mental space to be in. The right mental space to be in was individual tasks and having an attitude of, I just need to not quit. I just need to do the next thing right in front of me. But there's a lot more to the mental toughness than that. Can you, dig in at all to what you've observed and what you think makes up that mental toughness?
So let's talk about how we even build mental toughness.
Sure. Perfect.
I mean, if you go back, I mean, if you look at people from the Second World War, they had mental toughness built into them just from everyday life. And as you progress through time up to where we are today, I question whether 50% of society in America has any mental toughness, because we don't ask them to do anything hard anymore, right? So in the military, we use these crucible moments, and I'll refer to that a lot, because where you just get asked to do things you never thought you could do. And when you persevere through them long enough, or you get drugged through them long enough by your team, and then you finally stand up on your own two feet, you come out on the other end a little bit more mentally tough. And it's just a circular or cyclical series of events that builds mental toughness over time. I don't think it happens overnight. I think it's something that you got to kind of have burned into you. But you can't do that by saying, hey, I do CrossFit, and because I do CrossFit, I have mental toughness. It's usually something more significant than that. Or it's more significant than the event has to be, just leave it and burn an impression into your brain is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And one of the things that I sort of, I guess maybe what I'm getting at with my observation, and I've only got my perspective, but is that you don't really understand what the level of mental toughness that you can build looks like until you're in there building it. Like the level of mental toughness that it takes to do a GORUCK challenge, you can't feel what that's like without putting yourself there. And I imagine it, it's whatever level the task requires, it's a similar experience. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, correct. And I just think over time, as you're building mental toughness, people get into this space in their own mind where, well, if I just try hard enough, there's nothing I can't do. And so that's when you've kind of reached that point where you just start taking on all these tasks, kind of like the quote was referring to, of, hey, I'm just going to do it, whether people around me are not doing it or doing it or not. I'm just going to get it done because I have to, or because I want to.
Yeah. Or because I've decided to for whatever reason.
Exactly.
Alex, I think I cut you off. Did you have something you were going to add in there?
I was just going to mention how, like Phil, you mentioned CrossFit. You don't necessarily have mental toughness if you're doing CrossFit, because it seems to me it's just, it could be something that's hard, but you might have wanted to do it the whole way. So it was never actually hard for you to push through because you were excited about it, you wanted to do it, and there was nothing past your comfort zone necessarily. Yeah,
I think the element that's missing in CrossFit is the element of the unknown. So you should, when you do CrossFit, you show up to the gym and the WODs of the days on the board, and it's you know exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. Generally, these crucible moments that happen in a GORUCK event, or how the military trains people for mental toughness, involve the unknown. You know, Chase, I don't know if you followed GORUCK selection last year. That's a classic example of the unknown, right? I mean, you show up and really the only thing the participant knows is it's 48 hours and I'm going to do a standard Army PT test and a 12-mile road march. After that, I don't know what's going to happen. And so this is where this concept of, you can't get caught up inside your own head happens. When you're out walking 40 miles by yourself in the middle of the night and you've been awake for 30 hours, trying to not just walking and talking in your head going, don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. That's an unknown in CrossFit. I mean, what people do in CrossFit is amazing. Their physical prowess is great. But I think when we're talking about building mental toughness, and there is some level to that to be able to do CrossFit and CrossFit games and all those things, but this element of the unknown is not there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So getting back to your story a little bit, when you, I imagine, and you can tell me if this is true, but there are a series of moments in your career where you have this element of the unknown and you sort of step up to the next level of mental toughness, even if it's just, whatever the next job requires. Do you have any observations like that, like going from, the Ranger Regiment to SFAS?
That's interesting. I mean, you're challenged. The military is very structured in how it's built, whether it's how you're looking at rank or how they take a trainee from basic training and they advance them. So everything is in these small, stepping stones. So, for an infantry guy, he goes through the basic training, then he goes to infantry training, then he might go to airborne school, and then he might go to ranger school. It just keeps kind of stepping up, and you get to your unit and you do a 1-week field problem, then you do a 30-day field exercise, and then you do a deployment somewhere for a month. And so there's all these things that just kind of mold you and take you along.
I see. So yeah, it's more of like a slow change over time as you do each increment.
Right. But the interesting thing is, all along the way, it's another time you raise your hand and you volunteer. So you volunteer to join the military, and you may have volunteered to pick your MOS or your duty, so infantry, right? But you may not raise your hand and say, hey, I want to be airborne, or you may not raise your hand and say, hey, I want to go to ranger school. And every time you do that, that's one of these decision points that I think you're referring to is, okay, I decided to do this. Ranger school when I was a lieutenant was 72 days, right, of you got one meal a day and you slept maybe 4 hours a day in increments of 20 minutes. And so you know that going in. So you're raising your hand and say, yeah, I want to do that. And then when you get in there, it's basically a GORUCK event because it's a team event, and whoever is in your squad is now your team.
Yeah,
you guys are in it together, and so everybody has their moments, and this is why teamwork is so important to building mental toughness in organizations like the military. Because when you're having your weakest moment, somebody else on your team is having their strongest. And if you're a functioning team, the stronger will pull the weaker along, and eventually those roles will flip. And so, and that's you just keep going until you kind of hit that crucible moment where you've become so vulnerable that your person to your left and right knows your weaknesses and your strengths, and you're okay with your weaknesses and strengths, and you learn to rely on each other, and you start pushing yourself down this path further and further and further, enduring more and more and more. And pretty soon you look back on it and go, oh, that was easy, right? Next outing, we did this.
Was there ever a moment where you look back and went, well, now I understand that that's the process, that's what it takes. But, I guess maybe the better question would be, did you understand going into things that that's what your experience was going to be, that it was going to be making these decisions, raising your hand, and volunteering for the stuff that is going to be tough?
I think the volunteering was clearly well known, but to tell you the truth, I don't think I really thought about that process the entire time in the military. I think GORUCK's kind of brought that out of me, because now my role is more of, okay, as a cadre, I've got to facilitate that process for the group in the time given. And so, we obviously want people to walk away with some very particular experiences. And obviously some people walk away with more or less, depending on, what they got out of it or how they came into it. But yeah, it probably wasn't till I started doing GORUCK stuff that I actually thought about the mental toughness building process that the military uses to do that, right?
Yeah. So what strategies do you use to induce that, to build that? I know you mentioned like the element of the unknown. That's obviously built into the whole program, but is there anything that you do specifically as a GORUCK cadre to just continue to build that environment?
Yeah. So, like, again, when we start those events, we're Mr. Nice Guy, we're taking roll, we're telling them the rules and stuff. And then you kind of use the shock and awe thing right in the beginning, right? You do this welcome party, and even the most fit people, you can put in the span of 5 to 7 minutes, I can put somebody in a very uncomfortable position where they start thinking in their head, man, I don't know what I just signed up for, but this sucks, right?
Yeah, and when just to give a little context, my first experience with you, I did a light challenge with you on Halloween last year in New York. I don't know if you remember, but I was the guy in the Star Wars flight suit.
Yeah.
We had costumes and everything. Well, I was just getting over being sick, and within the first 20 minutes, we were doing like buddy carries around this path with a tree in it, and we were doing laps running, and I knew, having done a light and a tough before that, I knew mentally what it was going to take, and I still got there. I still got to that point where I was like, I know it's just a light, but I don't know if I can finish this one.
Yeah, right. So the people that have done GORUCK events before, or anybody that actually hears this podcast, will kind of know that now, right? But the thing is, you don't know how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
It might last 30 minutes. It might last an hour and 15 minutes. And when the person starts questioning themselves in their mind, this sucks, I'm just going to quit. That's the first moment in a GORUCK event where you just have to say, okay, take another step. Just 2 more minutes. Whatever it is you have to tell yourself to do. And some people just are, like horses walking in a line. As long as that other horse is in front of me, I'm just going to keep going, right? And that's good enough for them. But some people have to physically get in their head and say, I got to keep going. I don't quit. So yeah, that's kind of the first moment in a GORUCK challenge where, an individual has to display mental toughness and some physical toughness, because you're kind of on your own. We're not functioning as a team yet. And then the second part is when we transition from that point to working as a team. I somewhere during my events, I try to stop and talk about the phases of team building, and not usually up front, because I don't want to give it away. But so you throw out all this stuff, the team weights, if you will, and you got the American flag, and pretty soon you pick a leader and you say, hey, you've got 5 minutes to get this stuff on everybody's back and start moving. And so you're building pressure. And man, at that point you see everything, right? You see the person that you picked as a leader trying to do everything, and everybody else standing around, getting a piece of gum out, And then as soon as you see that, you're back to, all right, everybody getting the push-up position with your rucks on your back, or getting this, getting the bottom of the squat with the ruck over your head, and you start talking to them. You start, hey, what's wrong with this picture right here? Why is there 3 people building 2 stretchers and there's 42 of you? Why is nobody else helping? So, and you just start that process of getting that team to start looking around, coming out of your head, be selfless and be part of the group and help others out. And so that process can take, it could take 5 hours, 6 hours. I mean, some groups gel faster than others and some don't. And sometimes you still have a guy walking who's just an outsider.
Yeah.
He just can't figure out being part of the team makes it easier on me.
So that's, yeah, I can see how that sort of second moment of awareness with the team building thing would be really easy for you as a cadre to see. But you talked about that first moment of the individual decision, the individual experience of feeling like, okay, I need to quit now, but I'm not going to. I'm going to take the one more step. Can you see when that starts happening to people? Like when you're,
Yeah, they get big eyes. Their heads, their shoulders kind of slump. They start looking around a lot. What's everybody else doing? Matter of fact, I had one guy at an event in Florida, and I literally had, in my plan, I had about 2 minutes left, and this guy walked over and he goes, "Man, I just don't think I can do this." I'm like, "You sure, man? Like, just take a couple more steps." And literally 2 minutes went by and we were done. We were on to the team event, and that guy came up to me afterwards. He's like, "Man, I'm so glad you didn't just say go get an Uber, and you encouraged me to take just a couple more steps, because it was literally 2 minutes more, and he was ready to quit, right?" And he turned out to be a stellar guy, right? He was a big performer on the team. Was helping everybody out. He wasn't struggling physically the rest of the way. It was just one of those things. And so now I think if you were to ask that guy, he probably, when he encounters hard things in life, says, "Well, let me just go a little bit further and see what happens."
Right. Yeah. I think that's a better way to phrase the sort of change in mindset that I had in mind coming into this, is like, when you face something hard, just take that little extra step. Don't drop it because, it seems tough or it seems insurmountable. Just do the one more step and get through that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to mention, Chase, was like, I think, Phil, you mentioned that we don't do many hard things nowadays. And I think we're in a cycle of just trying to avoid them. If we never have to do it, we just try to put it off, get away with not doing it. And I feel like GORUCK gives people like a concrete thing that can help you break that cycle, something that you can sign up for. And whether you know it or not, you show up and you're encouraged and stay there and experience your own ability to push through something that's hard. And I think once that cycle has been broken in your mind, you realize that you can do that with other aspects of your life. So, Chase, I think that might be one reason why, like, I know how much it affected you when you came back from your first GORUCK. I just saw, there's a really big change in your mindset. And I think it just is a event that's probably perfectly set up to take that first step. And you can continue doing GORUCKs to do that, but you could do it in other aspects of your life too. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Chase.
No, I think you're right. Phil, if you got anything there.
I personally think that the lessons learned at a GORUCK event are applicable whether you're a father, mother, teacher, whatever your role is in life, you can take something away from it. Mm-hmm. In fact, you made me think of something, Alex. Maybe to get more people to come to GORUCKs, we should instead of calling it GORUCK, we should call it safe space. And then everybody would come into the safe space, and then they would find out that it's not safe.
Mm-hmm. So, knowing that it is called GORUCK and not safe space, what do you think it is that like what do you see in the people that sign up? Why would anybody do that? Why would anyone volunteer for that?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons, I think. I mean, I think there's a good proportion of them, or a good portion of them, that are just into physical challenges, and that's what they do. And they were looking for something different than the other events that are out there, right? I think there's a lot to do with the fact that they're Special Forces cadre led. You don't get that in any other endurance events that are out there. It's you're up against the clock, or you're doing this obstacle course, and so there's an element of getting more than just a physical workout at a GORUCK event, I think, is in there. And then you just got a bunch of people that are just, they hear about it and they've been trying to do something, and they think, well, maybe I'll just try this, right? You know, it looks cool on the website, right? The video looks pretty cool. Everybody's smiling and laughing. And I mean, I've had, like I said, I've only been doing this for 2 years, but I've had some events where individuals reach out to me on Facebook or whatever and tell me this big elaborate story of how the event changed their life. And, you know, maybe not their life, but, you know, in that moment of life where it just gave them that extra courage to, or self-awareness or self-confidence to do something more. And, and that goes back to Jason's motto, right? Building better Americans. At the end of the day, if we can get people to think better of themselves, become better members of society, become better members of teams, and stop being so inner focused and be a part of a community and share that with others around them, the whole, your town, your city, your state, your country starts getting stronger, right? So, you know, if you really dig into it, Jason's message is pretty deep. You know, building better Americans, that's a pretty big concept right there. But it's happening every weekend somewhere in America, in the over 1,000 events we're running this year.
Yeah, and occasionally overseas. You were just in Bastogne, right?
Yes. So that was a U.S. Army MP unit in Germany that signed up for a GORUCK event to do. So in the military, you'll do staff rides, where they go to a battlefield and they study it. And generally what that looks like is they show up on a bus, they've done a bunch of reading and maybe talked about the battle beforehand, and then they go tour the battlefield and see the monuments, but they get on the bus and they get off the bus and they get on the bus. So this battalion commander, you know, contacted GORUCK and said, hey, I don't like that concept. I like your GORUCK idea, and I just want to tie it to an event. So we tied it to the Battle of Bastogne. And but we run GORUCK events all over the world, actually.
Yeah. I saw there was one in Japan and some other places. So there are a lot of the GORUCK events, and I think actually every event that I've been to except the Halloween one has been a memorial event in honor of something or someone. How do you think that tying in the memorial aspect, if at all, affects that building of the mindset?
Well, so, you know, kind of a shout out to GORUCK Nation, right? That those people that are in the community of GORUCK, they are extremely patriotic people for the most part. And so those events that are dedicated to somebody or a particular event like extortion or, you know, there's a whole series of them. Those serve a purpose of helping people who want to honor our fallen heroes or be patriotic in some way that helps them do that. And I mean, next weekend I'm running one in Greenville, South Carolina for one of my former soldiers that was killed in Afghanistan. And you know, it's just all that more pressure on the individual in the event to not quit, because nobody wants to quit the event that was there to honor whoever that they signed up for, right? Yep. So it just adds another level of commitment.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of the way that it helps connect to the rest of the world, you know, the rest of the country, you know, people who you don't know who stood up for you, or like in the group event too, you know, you're counting on, everybody's counting on you. Yeah, that's really it. But.
So before we move on, Alex, did you have any questions that you had lined up or anything?
Yeah, actually for you, Chase, I just wondered, could you just describe what you feel like the change was for you? What was the switch when you...
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing was, like we were talking about before, realizing that there was this mindset or this action I could do called not quitting when something was really difficult and insurmountable. I think my previous mindset was, well, let me back off and maybe do something similar that's not as hard. Or, let me train a little harder and work up to it. But the fact that there's this strategy of, well, I made a decision, physically there's nothing here that I can't do, if you break it into individual tasks. So let me just get it done one step at a time. And as difficult or uncomfortable as it is, like, if I just keep pushing, I can do it. I think the biggest thing was just learning that. Mm-hmm.
So I also think there's an underlying state of mind in a person. Some people get to, and it happens at all different ages and stages for each individual, but I think before you can say, I'm not going to quit, or I just don't quit, you have to be in that place where you want to be better. That you want to do, you're willing to listen and learn, because getting to the point where your mental toughness is so good that you won't quit anything takes the ability to fall on your face 100 times and get back up and look around and see who did it better than you and try to emulate that, or learn, glean something from somebody else. And so there's a series of failures, and failing is how we learn as human beings, right? It's probably some of the best ways to learn. I mean, you can have the battles all day long about people who are book smart versus, street smart, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about what you do with failure. Some people take failure and they say, that's too hard, I quit, or that's stupid, or that wasn't fair. And they come up with some excuse of why that failure made them fail, and they learn nothing from it. Other people, a lot of people we see in our GORUCK events, experience failure time and time and time again throughout the event, and they keep getting back up because they learn something, and they learn something, and they learn. And so all those things build into mental toughness. But you've got to be in that state of mind to say, hey, I want to be better. And I just see that as an issue these days, where a lot of people are just so easy to throw their hands up in the air and say, well, that was hard, so I quit.
Do you think that it makes it easier for people to learn that when they're in a vulnerable position, kind of like what you do at the beginning of GORUCK?
Yes, as long as the person's acceptable to being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, being able to admit that I'm not the best at this, or I might just suck at this, right? Like, we get people that show up that don't work out. They don't do physical fitness every day. The whole event's painful for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you get, we get all kind of CrossFitters and endurance racers and all those kind of people. And so the physical part's really not that hard for them, but it's the cadre's job to make everybody experience something new and something hard during the event, so that everybody gets something out of it. So so right off the bat, when I do that welcome party, I do all these weird exercises, and people think, oh, this guy is just smoking us, which is true. But I'm also looking for people that have bad hips, bad knees, bad shoulders, so I can, figure out, is that guy, limping because he's feeling sorry for himself, or does he actually have an ailment? Because some people won't tell you what's going on. And you're also looking for people, how well people are communicating together or not communicating. Who's thinking ahead, or who's just so shocked by it. And so you can take all these things you see and you manipulate them throughout. To be quite honest with you, these events aren't all that well planned out. We have a start point. We generally have a route we're going to go along, but it's free flow from the moment you start based on what you see. What's the class given to you? And where should you take them? How far should you push them? Because some classes you'll get extreme athletes and other people that are beginners, and you've got to figure out how to push that whole class together so everybody walks away smoked mentally and physically, and they've learned something. Mm-hmm. And you can always teach leadership, right? You can always put the stud in the leadership role, and all of a sudden everything just changed for that person.
Okay, before we move on, Phil, any final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, we have some simple slogans at GORUCK, and one of them's, I believe you have the shirt on, don't fucking quit, right? Yeah. that's an easy way to say all these things that we've been talking. I mean, it coins the phrase of all this stuff we've been talking about, right? And
Yep.
and once you have it, I guess what I would say is if you don't have that attitude, find a way to get it. Maybe it's a GORUCK event, maybe it's something else for you, but your entire perspective on life changes. And,
Yep.
and what you get out of life and those around you get out of you in life change dramatically.
Yeah. Alex?
Yeah. Do you think you could just give a pitch to somebody, Chase? Because Phil basically did that in that section.
Yeah, my pitch is just sign up. Just do it.
That's the hardest part of GORUCK, signing up.
Yeah, that's what they say. All right, so with that being said, I do want to move on to the segment we call the off topic, where you can basically, as the guest, you get to pick the topic. Could be some idea that you've been thinking about, some philosophical thing you want us to understand. It could be something somebody said to you in line at the grocery store you want to laugh at. Could be a charity you want to promote. Any of those things. So Phil, what do you got for us?
Well, I think I'm going to go with your last comment. So if anybody knows me on Facebook from GORUCK, they also know that I'm a ambassador for the Green Beret Foundation.
Okay, so what is the Green Beret Foundation?
So the Green Beret Foundation is a nonprofit organization that raises money for Green Berets, Army Special Forces. And, like all nonprofit organizations, they take that money that they bring in and they churn it back out to the group that they're supporting, which in our case is Army Special Forces Green Berets. And so basically what they do with that money, they basically have four main categories where they spend that money. Casualty support, which is, so one of our Special Forces soldiers gets injured in combat or in a conflict, they immediately take some money, and I don't know if you know this, Chase, or not, but GORUCK gives a GR1 to every wounded Green Beret, and the Green Beret Foundation and GORUCK get together and they fill this backpack full of stuff that the soldier might need in the hospital, and a check for $2,500 to help him out with just random expenses that are going on as he's coming back into the States and into places like Walter Reed. And that's the beginning of their care for a wounded soldier. Then they go into extended support, which is some of these guys are in the hospital for a long time. They're supporting him in his extended stay, his family, his kids. They're helping out in those areas. They do family support. They offer Green Beret Foundation scholarships. And they also have a thing called the Steel Mags, which is a group for women who are associated with Green Berets who are going through the casualty process or who may have died in conflict. And then they do transition support, which is when our Green Berets are leaving service and they're going on to that next phase of life. They spend an exorbitant amount of time, and they have a really great program called the Next Bridge Line, which helps our Special Forces soldiers transition to a job in the civilian world.
Wow. Yeah, that's an important mission for sure. And so what kind of fundraising events or things do they put on? I know you've got something that you organized coming up.
Yeah, so they do a series of different fundraisers. They do golf classics and just different types of fundraising events. I actually have a full-time job outside of GORUCK. And so I'm between my full-time job, which I travel for, and GORUCK, which I travel for, and my family, there's very little time for me to go, hey, I got to go run a couple Green Beret Foundation fundraisers this month. So the way I do it is I tie a fundraiser on Facebook to every one of my GORUCK events I do. And I shoot for smaller pots of donations, but it builds up over time. But having said all that, this coming weekend in Greenville, South Carolina, we are running a Green Beret Foundation fundraiser. It's tied to, it's in honor of David Broughton, who was a Special Forces NCO in my company. Dave was killed in Afghanistan in 2014. His sister Lisa, was very close with Dave, and she became a active member of the Green Beret Foundation after his death. And last year, they ran a Green Beret Foundation event in Greenville, which was these 3 different length bicycle rides, and people were making donations, and she was raising money like that. So this year, I partnered up with Lisa, and we added in the GORUCK piece. So now we have 3 bicycle rides and 2 GORUCK events, and a whole other series of, we got an auction going and some other things to help raise money for the Green Beret Foundation. So that'll be going on this week. It's called the Hard Hitter GORUCK and Ride.
Awesome. Yeah, and hopefully we can have this podcast aired before that happens, so maybe get a little extra interest. Is that something that is going to happen regularly, or is it just a sort of one-time thing?
Yes, it'll be an annual event on on that, right around that Memorial Day weekend. And of course, as you know, since you're a GRT, that GORUCK runs Memorial Day events all over the country. So that's a big weekend for us.
Yeah. Okay, so if somebody wants to find out more about GBF, where should they go?
Just jump on the website, www.greenberetfoundation.com.
Greenberetfoundation.com.
I'm sorry, .org.
Awesome. Oh, .org.
I'm glad I double-checked it.
greenberetfoundation.org. And I'll have links and everything in the show notes. If somebody's interested in everything that you just had to say, wants to do an event with you, obviously check out goruck.com for all the GORUCK stuff. If they want to catch up with you, is there a good social media place to follow your posts, or do they have to do an event to connect with you?
No, hit me up on Facebook. On Facebook, my tag name is Cadre Ragnar.
Awesome.
Yeah, the more the merrier. We'd like to get the message out, and actually that probably helps some of those people that are trying to make that decision: do I sign up or not? They kind of get a feel for it. It's I think that's the last point we should probably make about GORUCK is its ability to build community. We do service projects at the end of every one of our events for the local community, but also this idea of a GORUCK community that's building around the nation. We have ruck clubs all over the country, and people get together and just hang out and do awesome stuff together because they met each other at a GORUCK event. So I know the ruck club up there in New York is very active.
I've met a bunch of the guys, but I actually have not rucked with the ruck club up here.
All right, well, the peer pressure's on.
I know. All right. Alex, do you have any questions or closing thoughts?
No, I think that was all really helpful, and I think just taking that first step is all you need to see a different way to do things, really, a different attitude you can have. So thanks for being on the podcast, Phil.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure.
Yeah, Phil, a.k.a. Cadre Ragnar, thank you so much. And, good luck with all of the fundraising stuff. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and hopefully I'll be able to sign up for an event with you soon. And, thanks for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.